everyone. Hi, Cheresse.
Hey,
Good
how are you?
afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you everybody who's joining us now. We have here Cheresse Thornhill, who is Design Director at Seed, which she will explain a lot more about what that incredible school is about. But first, I just want to thank Yellowbrick so much for hosting and collaborating with me to produce this BANYAN web series. This is the first one. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited to be talking to Cheresse today. And really just a little bit about BANYAN. It is a web series that will be highlighting Caribbean creative entrepreneurs who are all women. And when we say Caribbean, we mean women who have either grown up in the Caribbean or who have grown up with Caribbean parentage, have Caribbean descent. And the idea is really to sort of highlight the stories of people who have really sort of pursued their dreams in the creative fields and have really kind of, taken passion and purpose and infused it in their profession. So we have a lot we could share about Yellowbrick and this collaboration, but really want to dive right in to talking with you, Cheresse. So I would love to introduce you, but I think it would be great if you introduce yourself and then we could kind of go from there.
No, this is great. I mean, I think I just want to say thank you as well, because just talking to you makes me feel like I'm back home in Miami talking to my family. So this is such a special moment, and I'm so excited to be able to share a bit more about my journey, my heritage, and just how it's influenced and helped me really realize my dreams. So actually, I'm in New York now. I just moved to Brooklyn from Miami a few months ago, and to lead the Seed School at ADIDAS. And a bit about my background, I'm a footwear designer. It's been my dream since I was a kid. I love playing basketball, drawing, art, and I think there was a certain point in my life where all of those dreams just sort of realized themselves and came together. And so now it's just so exciting to be able to share that with everyone else.
Amazing. And before we get into even more of that, could you share a little bit about Seed School and what this program is?
Yeah, so every day I'm so excited because Seed is called School for Experiential Education and Design. And it has really been just the culmination of all my life experiences. I look back now and I'm thinking, okay, well, I went through that because, all right, I'm at Seed now. And so it's great. We have an amazing team of partners. Jessica and Liz are like my counterparts. And we're preparing 6 women to enter the footwear design industry. So women of color make up less than 0.05% of our industry, which is, we can go down that rabbit hole and we can talk about why that is. But I think now it's just about how do we move forward from where we are. So we've learned a lot about what the things are we need to work on to sort of change that. And so that's what our school is about. We kicked off in January of this year. We're doing a lot of fun things. We have 6 incredible women from different parts of the country. And we're just looking forward to kicking off here.
Just a quick note, Aaliyah, my assistant, is so yes, no, I mean, I'm so grateful that I had a chance actually to come and see the school in Bushwick and got an amazing tour with Liz, and thanks to Dion, a mutual friend and colleague who introduced us. And you told me the other day when we had a quick chat that you were actually only the second woman of color when you were working at Nike. So I know we want to really focus on how we grow from this space, but I do think acknowledging that incredible feat, and what it felt like to be, just to chart this course, because not only being a woman, also being a woman of color, but having this Caribbean background, this is an area I think that not many Caribbean women think about entering into the field of footwear design, the reach to work at Nike. So I think, if you could share a little bit about your journey and what gave you the courage to even go after that dream.
Yeah, my family is such a big inspiration for me. We'll dive a bit into that. I think it's really special to actually be in Brooklyn right now. So my family left Trinidad in the 70s and moved to Brooklyn, New York. I think that's the common path for most families from the Caribbean to come to New York and really be in search of new opportunities for their family. And my grandfather had, an artistic background, and everyone in my family is artistic in their own type of way. Mm-hmm. And they always supported me on every type of dream I've ever wanted to achieve. So I think support, vision, and being able to take risks. They took a risk to leave a country that, that they knew and grew up in, that their whole family was there to come to a new country and be able to realize that dream. And I think, you know, growing up in Miami, so they migrated from Brooklyn to Miami. And so I grew up there. And just like I said, always having an affinity for art and design and being able to follow that path. You know, I call out to my mom a lot because she supported me and was really like, you know, up at 5 a.m. with me at the bus stop, you know, when I was in high school, and just, you know, kind of following that path. I think there are a lot of sacrifices that everyone has to make along the way. And my family really inspired me to just keep going, you know. So I'd say getting into Nike was my life's dream. I've been working towards something like getting into that field or getting into that company since I was 14 years old. And I just remember being in high school and writing down my vision, right? So artists, everyone who is a creative knows that, okay, you have to kind of write your vision, right? So writing down an artist statement, where do I want to be in 10 to 15 years? Who do I want to impact? And I remember just writing those things down all the time. I even write a lot now, just any ideas or thoughts that I have, I just always write them down. And so I remember when I was 14 writing down, I want to work for Nike selling your Apple. You know, that was the motivation to keep going. So getting into college and then moving on into Nike, I had so many mentors who really kind of helped me along the way. Like Dwayne Edwards, you know, anyone who's in the footwear industry knows about Dwayne. And then Kim Shane, who's my best friend, was actually the first woman of color to be a footwear designer at Nike. So, I mean, I'll tap on those two people because they really kind of set the ground for me to move into Nike and really help me groom myself to be ready for that step.
Amazing. And I mean, you shared with me actually the artist statement that you wrote at 14, and it's incredible how verbatim that manifested, you know? So you actually might have that notebook with you. Do you have it nearby that you can show us?
Well, actually we can jump into that a little bit later. I've written down some notes around what I imagine a design team of 2020 would be. Wow. And I wrote a lot of notes around diversity in thought, diversity of experiences, and like how that can actually kind of align with the future and where businesses should go and like design teams can go.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll get to that for sure. Sure. I just really wanted to touch on, because this has really inspired me in learning more about you, that of course, there's been this charted course of the school that you went to, the university that you chose, the mentorship that you've had. I mean, some key points that were very decisive and very focused. But at the same time, it seems to me from reading your bio that so much about your sort of foundation of your spirituality, you know, we have a very sort of universal experience of how we grew up in terms of religion and family values. You know, all of those things I think seem to have played very strongly into how you were able to envision and manifest this incredible career and dream of yours.
Yeah, I come from a long line of praying women. And I think anyone that's from the Caribbean and has grown up in Catholicism knows that, you know, you're praying a few times throughout the day. Your grandmother, great grandmother may have an altar, you know, candles and et cetera. And so, you know, my cousin and I grew up with that foundation. And I think whenever you go through life where you may walk away from your values or your family or things that you know, and you go out and experience life, you kind of always come back to what you know and that foundation. So that really kind of helped me push forward.
And were there moments, you know, I know that you've been at Seed School, the design director at Seed School since the beginning of this year, right? But prior to that, can you explain a little bit about the jump between Nike and where you are now?
Absolutely. Yeah. I started at Nike in the summer of 2007. And, you know, it was my dream, you know, and it was such a surreal reality to actually be there and be around so many other great creatives that really kind of motivated me and helped me grow. And I was at Nike for almost 10 years. I started there at 22 years old. And, you know, I think I hit 30 and I started thinking about my life and evaluating it like most people do. I think 30 is just that hump where you start to look at your life and you think, hey, is it what I imagined it would be? Am I where I want to be? And where is it going? You know, and I think I got into that point. I started looking at my life and the trajectory and where it was going. And it wasn't aligning with who I felt like I was at that point. And purpose, spirituality, God, my path, my purpose, like all those things really started to come to a head. And I had to ask myself some really tough questions. Like, is your life going down the path where you feel like it should? And I had some personal things going on as well as professional things going on, and it just wasn't coming together. And so I decided to resign, with a 1 week notice, and move back home to Miami. And my mom and my aunt and I, we drove in a U-Haul from Portland to Miami in 6 days. And I didn't have anything lined up. It was the first time in my life where I hadn't planned everything out. My entire life was about planning step by step by step and achieving. And at that moment, I really had to kind of step out on faith and say to God, like, I don't know where this is going, but I know that this isn't it. And I'm just going to step out on faith and trust that the way will be shown, and I really wanted to teach and mentor. And so when I moved back home to Miami, I was teaching, part-time at the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. I went back and I taught at my old high school for a bit, and I just kind of allowed God to kind of guide me to where, I was supposed to be. And then I ended up getting back into footwear design, and I was designing footwear for Champion up until December, and Jessica and I laugh about this all the time. She offered me the role at Seed School in December. And then I just had to make the decision to move to New York the next month, but I knew that it was a God move. I knew that it was everything that I had been working for up until that point. And for me to get back into corporate, opportunity like this, it would have had to have been something like this that had more purpose and was about creating opportunities for other people like me, who I was really passionate about.
Amazing. It's really in all those sort of gaps of your life that I think things like your faith and the foundation of your family and the sort of inner strength that you have really has to be drawn on, because you think, well, okay, you have all these steps towards the perfect career, but it's all those in-between moments that really sort of are the testament of what you're drawing on. And I think one of the things that has stood out to me is this balance between working for corporate entities and having your own business. And I know you've done both. Right. So it would be great if you could talk a little bit about the difference between the two, as well as how a corporate environment could really sort of, what drew you back into that? What was the sort of the reason that you were able to go back into that world?
Right. I stepped away because I felt like my work was lacking purpose that aligned with my values and what I wanted to do. And I moved back to Miami. I was teaching, but I also started my own design consultancy so I can help other either startup companies or other brands that align with my values and help them realize some dreams and goals that they may have. And so when this opportunity came along with ADIDAS, I think it was the culmination of alignment. They're amazing people at the brand who believe in equality, believe in creating opportunities for people who may not, have those opportunities or have been exposed to, areas or parts of the business, that they want to be a part of. And the brand aligned with my values, and it was an easy decision to make after evaluating it and say, okay, well, this is everything, that you want to do. So it makes sense to join forces and partner.
So I think what I gather from that is that on both sides of the spectrum, if corporate entities want to draw the best talent, as well as the sort of, trust and sustainability of the consumer, that really purpose and mission and sort of grounding in that is the key.
Absolutely. It is, especially for this generation where I feel like, myself, like millennials or Gen Zers are now growing up in a world where there's so much going on. It's not just about, okay, what am I wearing today? Or how much money can I amass? It's really about social purpose. How are these brands thinking about society and thinking about people more than just as consumers?
Yeah.
And I think that we're smarter consumers now. We're more aware of ourselves and the world and our impact and the future. So we would align ourselves with brands or small businesses or our own companies based on values and purpose.
Totally. And because, a lot of the community and audience that I interact with, because I live in Trinidad in the Caribbean, are Caribbean people. And I have such a sort of emphasis on Caribbean women, Caribbean girls, and how they see themselves in this world. I often get asked, how do you for instance, me in fashion and Project Runway, like what are the steps to get where you've gotten to, you know? And one of the things that I try to emphasize is that the authenticity of who we are is actually our biggest asset, you know? So I think if you can speak a little bit about that, how you see that and how it's impacted your career and your life.
For sure. I think that's something that I'm learning every day, like how to be authentically and more of myself. And I think there's a process of kind of breaking off the barriers or the walls or the facades that we create for ourselves. We think, because I feel like growing up, you learn early on as a woman of color that there's just something that's not right or will not be accepted socially about you, just who you are, you know? And my team, I think we talk about this all the time, and they're probably laughing right now because we talk about authenticity and identity all the time. So we're always grounded in that. And we're asking ourselves those questions. Am I showing up authentically myself right now? And what is that? And who am I? So that I can present to the world who I am and leverage what makes me special. Like what makes us special, that's our competitive advantage. And if we're aware of that and we learn how to use it and bring it to the surface, I think we'll get so much further than we would have otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, you're wearing Ivy Park right now, so there's that, you know, already there's examples in women like Beyonce. Sure. Our pride and joy in the Caribbean, obviously, is Rihanna, you know, and they both represent that they've really fully succeeded off of, not from the place of authenticity, you know. And I think the 6 young girls who, you know, so incredibly have this incredible opportunity of being part of Seed, you must have that conversation with them all the time.
We do. We talk about it all the time. And I think for me, and you know, when I talk to them, I'm actually talking to myself as well. Right. Because it is, I think where we are and how we perceive ourselves, it's a learned like mindset. You know, it's based on some of the life experiences that we've had, things that we've heard, ways in which we start to view ourselves. So it's a journey of becoming, and you know, they're becoming, and then, you know, Liz and myself, we're also becoming as we're all kind of going through this journey.
Right, because authenticity is ever changing, right? Like you're always going to be a version of this becoming self. So I guess it's really not static. No, it's really a continuous thing.
Right, and it's about also being present in the moment. I think even right now, I think this is, you know, we're all kind of stuck inside because there's so much kind of going on in our world. But I think there's an opportunity in this to really ask ourselves, you know, who are you today? Yeah. You know, I think sometimes we could get stuck in who we were yesterday and the beliefs that we had yesterday about ourselves or about the world and about our families. And now things are changing, our priorities are changing, and we have to kind of take account of who am I today? And who do I want to be tomorrow? And what I need to do today to prepare myself for tomorrow.
Right.
Because yesterday's gone, so we can't even go back and touch that, right? It's just about forward movement.
Absolutely. So I just want to stop quickly and say, you know, we can take questions at any point. You can type them into the chat and we'll be happy to answer. Someone just asked if they'll be able to see the replay of this webinar, and yes, you will, at yellowbrick.co/Anya. So please make sure and check it out if you've missed a little bit of it. And Cheresse has also offered very generously to do a couple sessions, or maybe one session, whatever seems most useful, with her directly after this in a sort of office hours Q&A format. So if you are interested in that, please send us a message. You can send it through my website, which is anyaayungchee.com/banyan, BANYAN. We really, really want to continue this conversation and recognize that you know, one of the things that I feel might be really helpful, even though I'm sure you've gone through this so many times, but for anybody who's interested in pursuing a career in footwear design, especially coming from this region where the opportunities to do something like that, you know, we don't have any schools in the Caribbean that teach that specific track of design. Do you have any specific steps, suggestions, tools that you would like to share with anyone now?
Oh, lots. We could probably dive deeper into it another time. Reading books, it's so important. There's only so much you can find on the internet. I mean, you can find a lot more now, but everyone's finding the same amount of information. So I talked a bit about authenticity and being authentically yourself, like discover your own voice as a creative. Who are you? what matters to you. If it's sustainability, make sure that you have a thread of sustainability in your work all the time. If it's consumer focused, if it's more artistic, if it's based on, materials, like find what's going to make you unique in your own voice, and then bring that to the forefront and research and read, and bring those things into your work. Also drawing. So I talk to my team about it all the time. Like, are you sketching today? Have you drawn this week? So drawing, and drawing anything. It doesn't have to be shoes, just making sure that you're training your eye and your hand to move together as one. And so that's a big part of it too.
We actually have a question. What are some of the books you recommend?
Oh, there's so many about so many different subjects. There's a lot of shoe and sneaker books out there. So I would just Google that. But there are a few that I love. One's called Mastery by David Greene, and it talks about how to master your own crafts. And he, we've talked about, we've heard of the 10,000 hour rule, and that you can get better at anything if you practice for 10,000 hours. But David Greene or Robert Greene talks about 30,000 hours. So it takes 30,000 hours to become a master, in your field. So that's a really great book. I recommend that to anyone.
Amazing. We could always put a few of these specific things into, if anybody emails us, we can send you.
Yeah, for sure.
These posts.
I have a bunch.
What about in terms, what university did you go to, and how did you choose that one? And if somebody really wanted to pursue their education in this area, what would you recommend?
For sure. I went to College for Creative Studies in Detroit, Michigan, and I see Sabrina gave us a shout out there. Sabrina's awesome. She was my admissions counselor at CCS, and I've ate Thanksgiving dinner at her house many times. But that was a school I went to, but there's so many other great schools out there. But, art school and art education is becoming more and more expensive, and really not something that is attainable for a lot of people. And you don't necessarily have to have, a college degree to get into this field. I think it's mostly about your portfolio and the work that you put forward. So going back to what I talked about before, making sure that you have your own creative voice that's different and unique from everyone else. And then how do you bring that together? How do you show your work? How do you explore making things, designing things, just putting it out there on Instagram? I know a lot of people who've just gotten hired from their Instagram, so there's so many platforms today where you can share your work. So that's what I would say.
And, with fashion, what I did anyways, I found a seamstress through my mentor. First, I found a mentor, then she put me in touch with someone to sew my prototypes. And my first collection was basically a set of prototypes, but how do you do that with footwear? What would you say? Is there a direct path to sort of producing your own line without having to go through a brand or a company?
Yeah, I know a lot of people have started their own brands. I think it's, for one, finding factories, which can be kind of challenging during these times, but just learning how to create footwear on your own. I think a lot of times when we work with factories, we need to send over mock-ups over to them. So I would say get a pair of shoes that you feel like would be close to what you want to create and take it apart. Because first of all, you need to understand what's happening inside the shoe to be able to design one. So I talk to my team all the time, like take shoes apart. We're working on a project right now. So like take the shoe apart. What did you learn from it? How can you reconstruct it and design it in a way that you feel like makes sense for you or what you would want to do? I think just sort of mocking things up, sewing things by hand, which is really fun, but using existing shoes as a model.
Right.
Go from.
I literally would never have thought of that. And it's so funny because I design clothes, and that's sort of how I learned the construction of clothes as well. But it just has never occurred to me that it's exactly the same process, with shoes.
Yeah. What I love about footwear is that it's like fashion and product design comes together as a baby. Like there's a patterning and like the cut and sew part of footwear. And then there's the product side that's very around, problem solving. How do you create comfort or cushioning systems for consumers or athletes specifically? It's bringing like fashion and product design together, and it's like footwear. That's what I love about it so much.
And it's so functional, like every little detail of how you design, the choice of fabric, the choice of shape, all affects how healthy it is for your feet, your body, your alignments, all of those things. Clothes don't always have such an impact on your well-being in the
Absolutely,
way that shoes do, you know?
for sure.
So, um, we have a few more questions. Let me go back to this. Wow, we have quite a few questions. What do you believe is the best product niche to be creating for since the pandemic? An example is wearables.
Okay. Well, we're spending a lot more time at home.
Yes.
So, which presents an interesting, challenge for footwear designers and footwear industry. So think about your consumers, think about what they're doing at home, what are they wearing at home. Now that everyone's at home, just kind of take stock of what you're wearing at home yourself, and are people dressing from the waist up now? If they're going to be on Zoom calls, every day like we are and my team are,
Mhm.
taking stock of, okay, are we designing for the waist up? What's someone wearing, on their feet at home? So there's a huge opportunity there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Someone is trying to start a blog about high fashion, streetwear, and sneakers. Any advice about starting a blog?
Finding a unique point of view. There's so many out there. You don't really want to offer the same thing that someone else is offering. So I think it goes back to authenticity.
Yeah.
What's important to you? What makes you different from someone else? Going back into your heritage. Like for me, whenever I'm working on a project, I want a unique perspective, and I want to add my own thoughts and identity into it. Like I always look back and I'm thinking about, what is unique to me,
Yeah.
what is a unique point of view that I can offer that's different from everyone else, especially in my own industry. And I tap on that all the time. So I'd say like make sure you have a unique point of view.
And something that I think that you keep touching back on is how important education is, whether that's formal education or reading, being a sponge basically, right? Like
Absolutely.
looking for every version of how do you increase your and expand your knowledge and your awareness of what's happening around you.
Right. And being inquisitive too. My team and I, we talk about creativity all the time and what is creativity and how can I foster my creativity? How can I become more creative? And we always talk about being curious, asking the right questions, like, because asking the right questions is going to get you to a new place.
Right.
So that's something that I think is really important.
And I think part of asking the right questions is not being afraid to just ask any question.
True.
Because at some point you'll hit the right question. But
True.
if you're too afraid, especially like you're saying, some of the boundaries around being female and a woman of color is that you don't feel as brave to ask every question, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, honoring your own voice. I've been talking about that in a few other calls, with our team as well. And that was something that was really always a challenge for me. And I grew up being shy, and my whole family can attest to that. And they probably can't even imagine I'm sitting and having this conversation with you right now. Honoring your own voice. When you have a thought, say it. Not holding back. There's no like dumb question, which we always hear, but I don't know if we actually really believe it as people. And then, there have been these sayings where a little girl should be seen and not heard.
Yep.
And I think now that's really kind of shaped my own thinking and has been a thought process that has helped me back, So now I'm working on, if I have a thought, I'm going to speak it or write it down and I can speak it later, so honoring yourself and your voice in that way.
To that point, when I visited with Liz and you at Seed, I didn't know how little the approach to designing footwear in the case of Adidas and, well, not just Adidas, across the board, the lack of female designers in the industry is a direct relationship to the way in which shoes are not necessarily designed for women from scratch.
Yeah.
I think speaking up and having a voice is the first step to even being able to, have your voice through design.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's systemic. We can have that conversation another time, but I think it's important that, those of us who have had those experiences, so important to give, design and creativity does not belong to one group of people. It's universal, belongs to everyone. Like we're creative because our creator created us to be creative, so it's something that I don't think one group of people should own. And I think the more that we're able to share, everyone just share the information that you have. Yeah. I don't think it should be monetized. It's free information that I think the more that we share, it will get us all to a better place, especially women. You know, the more we share with each other and build community, which I think is so important, and mentor each other, you know, I think our future's going to look very different. And
Absolutely.
design will look different because of that. And, you know, it'll have more of a unique point of view.
100%, which is a huge part of why we're having this conversation.
Right.
And why we're so grateful. I'm so grateful to Yellowbrick for offering a scholarship as a result of this call, this talk. So we're actually going to choose the winner of that scholarship today. So I'm going to go back to the chat and see what other questions we have. What tips do you have for fashion design and starting your own brand? I think we touched on this a lot, you know, in terms of authenticity, owning your voice, but any specific things?
This is something that's really tangible research. Mm-hmm. There are so many brands out there that duplicate each other, especially in footwear. Like, who really needs another footwear brand out there? I think there's more autonomy in fashion, but I'd say in footwear, there's so many brands. So I would say if you're going to start your own footwear brand, make sure you have a unique perspective. Make sure you know exactly who you're designing for. Mm-hmm. It's the key, which I feel like a lot of people maybe skip over. Like, they have this great idea, but then they don't know who it's actually for. And then does it even matter to the person you want to sell it to? You know, I think especially in the society we're in right now and like post-COVID, like people are going to be a lot more cautious and pay a lot more attention to what they spend their money on, who they're giving their money to. So know your consumer, know the person you're designing for, know what matters to them, and how can you really service them and provide like a real need for this person, not just another piece of foot covering. You know, how can you make it really something that's meaningful for that demographic or that group of people?
Amazing. I totally agree. How can we get into the second class of Seed? I knew someone was going to ask me this. And how can we find a mentor in footwear design? What is the best way to reach out?
Okay. The first question, I think, just send an email to Anya through her email address, and we can definitely get more information out to everyone on that. And what was the second question?
How can we find a mentor in footwear design specifically? What is the best way to reach out?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place. And I think Instagram is good too, but I think, you know, the people that reach out to me on LinkedIn, because it's just more of a professional and controlled environment. And I think it shows that person is a lot more serious about wanting to get into this. So I'd say reach out to people that you find on LinkedIn that are in the profession and in the field, because it'll show that you're serious, and then be persistent. And then also when you ask, you know, for advice, make sure you have something to show. Make sure, you know, you've done your research on the field so that that person knows exactly how they can help you. Don't just send out some open-ended question, but make sure that there's been research done and you know exactly where you want to be. And then you ask that person, well, hey, I really need help in this particular area. How can you help me? You know, make it easy for someone to say yes.
Totally. Just to remind people, in case anybody missed it, and specific to that question, is that Cheresse is offering to do a follow-up Q&A in the form of a sort of office hours format, probably in the coming weeks. So just send us an email through my website, which is anyayoungchee.com/banyan. And this might be an opportunity to start a conversation like this around mentorship, not necessarily with Cheresse, but you know, it could be the start. So that's what I would recommend as an immediate option. Wow, so many great questions. What software and tools / equipment do you use for footwear design projects?
I'd say for 2D, we always use Adobe Illustrator, which is a great program. And I've been seeing a lot of posts from Adobe as of late, like they're offering, you know, packages where you get, you know, access to their entire suite of programs. So Adobe Illustrator is a big one. And there are other 3D footwear programs like Moto and a few other. I'd say just do a few Google searches. YouTube is a great resource because there's so many videos and there's a lot more being done in the space now. So there are a lot of options, but those two come to mind first.
Perfect. What is advice you would give to someone trying to get their foot in the door of the sneaker corporate world?
I think it depends on what area. Right. So if it's footwear design, I'd say work on generating a portfolio and networking and building a community. If it's one of the other areas, marketing, or there's also development, there's so many other roles within our industry that I don't think are highlighted enough. But I would say tapping into your mentors, finding mentors, and then you can ask more of those questions and be exposed to some of the other roles within our field.
Perfect. Okay. Without proper education, how do you learn the mechanics, engineering, and making a shoe functional?
Asking the right questions, taking the shoes apart.
Constructing the shoes.
Even you know, with a college education, there was so much I learned afterwards, you know, being in the field. But I'd say taking the shoes apart so you can kind of understand what's going on inside of them. And now, like, there's a lot more, if we're talking about biomechanics of how the foot works, YouTube, again, there's so many great, you know, videos out there. When I was in college, YouTube wasn't even around.
Right.
Or Instagram. So there's a lot more that we had to do back then because we didn't have access to all this information. But I think it's just researching.
Yeah.
A lot more research. And there are books out there on you know, foot mechanics and what happens, you know, when you're running, what happens to your foot. Understanding those things will help, you know, create better designers.
And then, of course, the Yellowbrick Sneakers Essential course, which we're giving a scholarship for today, is accessible through yellowbrick.co. So definitely, this course is something I would definitely recommend for somebody who's trying to start. And of course, with COVID, going physically to a school, it might be a little while before that happens again. So online courses.
Yeah, that's where it's at now for sure, and moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. Speaking of which, how do you think Seed School is going to proceed now that this whole, you know, situation has...
We're 100% virtual right now for sure. And you know, it's interesting. I think on one hand it's tough. On the other side, it's creating so many more opportunities for us than we would have had otherwise. Right. You know, our community, we're very focused on growing our community. And tapping into people or other designers, especially here in New York now that everyone's really attached to their computers. It's creating more opportunities for us to grow our community. Also problem solving. You know, we talk about problem solving every day with our team as it relates to footwear. And now we have a real world issue. You know, how are we going to continue to push forward and educate ourselves now virtually? And it's creating a lot more opportunities. It's really exciting.
Amazing. And do you, by that, do you mean that perhaps the school, the offerings of the school could become available online to a wider audience, or will it still remain a highly curated sort of small group of students that you focus on?
Yeah, it's so open-ended still. You know, we're having those discussions all the time, and we're talking about what the future is going to look like. But I think it's more exciting to me now because now we have a new constraint. And I think, like we talked about before, creativity is really, like, great creativity is birthed out of constraint. So now we have this physical space constraint. What could we do now that we haven't done before?
Right.
So that's the exciting part.
Amazing. Someone says, I left Trinidad last year mostly because I've always wanted to learn about shoe design and become a shoe designer.
That's awesome.
Then COVID-19. Do you think learning about shoe design online is a viable option? And do you know of any, well, we just mentioned Yellowbrick, do you know of any online design schools that offer shoe design?
Aside from Yellowbrick, there's Pencil, you know, Footwear Design Academy, which is, you know, is led by my mentor, Dwayne. And I think there's going to be a lot more popping up. But like I said before, going to the same source that so many other people are going to, yeah, you're going to get the same information, you know, which helps to a certain extent. But then think about moving past that. How do you diversify yourself from everyone else who's getting the same education? Right. And it goes back to what I said before, like really diving into who are you? Who am I as a creative? What are the things that I'm really passionate about within that space? And then how do I allow that to influence my work?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you can't necessarily in any concrete way predict this, but do you feel as though, given this creative constraint that's happening, given the sort of inevitable shift into even more conscious consumerism, that there's room for the Caribbean creative in the footwear design industry? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just about community too. Like I said, I think we'll continue to have more of these talks, and maybe it's in another format, but it's about building community and sharing, because I think all the information that anyone knows or needs, it's out there and someone else has it, you know? So it's all about sharing, and I'm definitely down to do that. And I have other, you know, women that are women of color, footwear designers, you know, that are my friends and are in the industry and would love to share, you know, their point of view and perspective. So this is only the start. It's only the beginning.
Totally. That's how I feel. I mean, when you and I spoke prior to this, it really did make me realize that like this is an entirely untapped community opportunity, exactly what you're saying, that there's, you know, you've really benefited from and you've actively created a community around you. Mm-hmm. And now the strength of your collective experience could have so much impact on so many other people, you know, and it's really refreshing to have that type of conversation. And in the Caribbean, obviously, we are in a constant sort of evolution towards being collaborative, like truly, genuinely collaborative versus competitive. Yeah. So I think coming out of this conversation, if we could build that together and create an opportunity for more women coming from the Caribbean, or not necessarily only from the Caribbean, but I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, that competition, I think it's tough because I think we've been brought up to feel like there's only room for one. There's only space for one, and you know, it has to be me. It can't be you, therefore I can't share. But that's such a myth. You know, I think that holds us back. And I think the more that we realize that there's space for all of us because we're all uniquely different, like there are no two people who are the same. Yeah. So, and there's space for all of us. I think the more that we kind of come together and share, we can actually create that space for all of us to exist, you know, together at the same time.
I mean, the thing that stood out to me the most when I met the 6 young women who were in the first cohort of Seed School was how much they emphasized that, yes, the opportunity to learn has been incredible, the access to all of the skill sharing, all of that was incredible. What all of them said was that being able to be part of this community of each other, the sisterhood they kept referring to. That's so, I mean, I was so moved by that.
Yeah. It's awesome. It makes me smile because I think, you know, in the beginning or going to design school, there's a handful of us, you know, and every year going into the next year, I'm like, oh, where's so-and-so? And she's gone, you know? So looking at like my freshman year to, you know, senior year and looking at, you know, all the women that started and who actually finished. And there are things that I think just happen along the way where we kind of fall off, but I think it's just all about support. You know, like we need to be supportive and we need support. None of us can do it on our own. So the more that we can support each other, and that's what we talk about every day, you know, at our school, supporting each other, and we want to all win. You know, if I win and you lose, then it was a loss, you know? Right. So we want to make sure that we all win and we get to where we want to be.
That's incredible. Okay, so we have questions in another chat. So I just want to make sure that we cover. Oh, okay, yes. I will say the email address one more time. It is, well, you're actually going to go to my website, which is anyaayungchee.com/banyan, BANYAN, which will give you access to finding out more about the Q&A session with Cheresse and any other opportunities that come out of this. And we're going to choose, like I said, the winner of the scholarship today on this call. But first, I just wanted you to talk a little bit more, Cheresse, that you mentioned earlier in the call about the manifestation aspects of your life and your vision for diversity in design as we move forward and especially out of this COVID experience.
For sure. Here, I'll share my screen if I can.
Yes.
So this, can you see this?
Yep.
This was actually a notebook. Like I said, I have tons of notebooks, and anyone who is an artist, you know, about having your sketchbook with sketches. And I was always just interested in design, but also people and teams and designers. And I'm pretty sure I was in a meeting. This is when I was back at Nike. It was the date is at the top. It's December 1st, 2011, and I was thinking about design and designers and diversity of thought. And on the right, I actually wrote, you know, design team in 2020. I don't know if I was really thinking about I wanted to build something like this. I don't know what it was. It was just, you know, random thoughts, like I said, but I think there's so much power in writing things down. whatever pops
100%.
into your mind in the moment, because it exists within you. You don't know where it's going to go, but if you write it down, like, I feel like it will manifest itself in your future.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'm just taking it in.
Yeah, go ahead. There's so many notes on this page, but like I said, it's just, when you ask anyone a question, you get an answer. You ask yourself a question, and then you write it down, and then you think about what you wrote down, and then you ask yourself another question, and there's this creative flow that you can get into, and it's really interesting to find, where you'll end at the end. Like, I love drawing those little maps, those bubble maps at the bottom.
Yeah.
Thinking about an idea, like a team, and then what makes up a team, and then just start writing those notes. I talked about psychology, culturalists, communicators, engineers, scientists. I think there are so many people that are in different fields that would, really be a great team members, especially from a design standpoint. So yeah, these are just some thoughts from back then. So it's really amazing now to be in 2020 and to be, part of a team and what we do every day. And a lot of it is on this page. So it's pretty awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, you inspired me to find my first ever design sketchbook from my first collection. And I still have it, because like when I look back on this was, I don't know, 12 years ago. I looked at it last night, I thought, how could I have ever thought that I would go on to win Project Runway? I can barely even draw, right? And like, yeah, I mean, it's so powerful to not only write these things down, but also to keep them as a reference for where you were, where your mind was at, like what was, you really have this incredible ability to have foresight that if you don't sort of note it, you lose it, and like you said, we are created by a creator to create.
Right. So, yeah, Sabrina said earlier in the chat that we're in design church. There is a scripture that says, write the vision and make it plain. So
exactly.
So it's in there.
Amazing. I'm just gonna make sure we have answered as many questions as possible. Oh, okay, this is a good one. Being a design director, do you still get to create and design sneakers?
I'm looking for ways to do that. My team and I, we collaborate a lot, but I think, I've been saying this as of late to them as well. Like, I'm looking for another creative outlet, and even writing. So I think there's so many other ways to be creative. I would love to continue, and I will continue creating products. But even now, having the room to explore my other creative outlets, like I used to write so much poetry, like in college, and now having the time to sit and think and wanting to get back into that, so that's like my game plan for next week when I'm on vacation or staycation.
Yes.
Writing a bit more and exploring some of those other creative outlets that I'm really passionate about, just haven't had the time to do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on an hour, so I want to be conscious of your time. And I think there's so much you've touched on that we could, probably blow out into like 5 or 6 other conversations.
Sure.
Again. But for today, I really think that the thread of authenticity, the thread of, returning to your truest self, knowing that that's where everything sort of births from, and having the courage to be that through whatever spectrum you get drawn into is so powerful. And it has really like stood out to me that that's a core message. But if there's anything else you'd like to make sure that everyone takes away, please go ahead and share.
Yeah, I would just say, like, share and give. I think sometimes when we feel disadvantaged, like many of us may feel, if we're a person of color and we feel like we don't always have everything that we need, or we think about, oh, I have this dream, but I can't because of X, Y, Z. I think we always have it within us to achieve that, right? And I think it's just about like using your resources, doing research, etc. But then also giving too. I think when you give, you also receive. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've been focusing on as of late, just giving more, whether it's like of myself or thoughts or whatnot. And now I'm noticing that there's so many things that are coming back, things that I may have needed, and it's coming to me, and I didn't even go out and search for it, like Seed. you know, I was home in Miami and very like quite content, you know, and had no plans to ever move again. And so just being in Brooklyn and being in New York now and working with an amazing group of women in the team that I have, like I couldn't have, this wasn't a dream that I had, you know, but it
Yeah.
was what I needed, and it was a way
But
to
it
get.
clearly was a dream you had because it was on that page from 2011.
Yeah, that I hadn't really thought about again. But you know, I think your purpose makes space for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's about giving whatever
Amazing.
you have, because I think we all have something to give. So
Absolutely. Well, in that spirit, I'm just going to go ahead and choose someone for this scholarship, which we want to thank again Yellowbrick for gifting today. And it is for the Sneakers Essential program that they offer. I'd like to go ahead and choose Danielle Tardier Hines, who asked the question about whether or not doing a learning shoe design online would be something that would be viable. So here's a viable option, and we're so happy to give that to you today, Danielle. So we'll make sure and get in touch with you after this and figure out the logistics. And again, thank you so much, Cheresse. This was incredible. So powerful to hear your story. I know that it's touched many hearts and minds today. I hope that anybody who else wants to get, you know, pieces of it that they missed, it will be replayed on yellowbrick.co/Anya. And we, as we said, we're going to have some follow-up. If you're interested in that, just let us know through my website. And Cheresse, thank you so much.
this is so awesome. I feel like I'm at home, so thank you so much.
That little bit of Trini accent
goes a long way.
Well, hopefully when we're allowed to travel again, you can come and visit us.
I will have to. It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay, well, have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and stay safe, stay healthy, and we will be back again next week. So talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.